Well, as I said, thank you to everyone for being here this evening. This is really exciting and it's very humbling. I am filled with an overwhelming sense of gratitude and also of responsibility, but also of a real sense of promise about what we're about to embark on together. I promise that I'll be fairly brief, as I know bedtime is approaching for some of the little ones, and everyone really just wants to hear what Dr. Coupland has to say. But at the risk of overstating the significance of what this evening represents, I'd like to suggest that this little project here that we're all a part of is something of a mini refounding of America, if you will. And that we're marking this evening is both cause for celebration and also the recognition of a challenge that is before us. But first, I'd like you to just consider briefly some of the parallels between the founding of this little school and our nation. Both were born of necessity, resulting from what might be called a long train of abuses and usurpations, in the words of the Declaration. Both seeking true independence from civic institutions that, in Dr. Arndt's words, lost their mission. Both have been established by a pioneering people, willing to bear risk for the sake of building something greater, not just for themselves, but for their posterity. Both are built first and above all on an idea. Not on a geography or a tribe or a language, but on an idea, on first principles. Both are governed according to principles that are rooted in the truth, not just power, and rest upon the long and deep lessons of history that the old ways are sometimes still the best ways. Both were formed in pursuit of that old notion of happiness, the life of virtue. Both were motivated and informed by their founders' deep faith in the sovereignty and the providence of God and the affairs of men, but also as civic institutions that are open to all people. And both, ultimately, I think, aspire to be a city upon a hill, an example for others to see and hopefully someday to imitate. So, in the first instance, in celebration of this founding occasion, I want to make some recognitions and say some thanks. And the first is of our founding board, those who quite literally have pledged much of their lives over the last couple of years, their fortunes, and yes, even their sacred honor. What we're doing is not particularly popular in some circles. In order to give birth to this institution, based on little more than a sincere devotion to their community, a love of liberty, and the recognition that it is indeed a blessing and not an entitlement. We owe a debt of gratitude to them all, that we can repay in only one way, and that is by stewarding this institution well and forming the knowledgeable and virtuous citizens for whom they've pledged their efforts. Members of the board, if you would please stand, I'd like you to stand and be recognized. They and those who served on the board with them are the reason that we're all here. Second, I want to recognize and thank all of you, the founding families who stepped out in boldness and in faith, knowing what a good education truly requires and committing yourselves to it, not after the masses have made it popular and safe and sure, but now, on day one, when it entails some risk and some uncertainty and some unknowns. And particularly, I want to recognize you students, who will forever be the first patriots of Columbus Classical Academy. It is ultimately for you that we have built this school, and for you that we will strive to sustain it. And so, students, I'd like you all to stand and be recognized. Whether she wants me to or not, I want to recognize and thank Mrs. Spaulding, our George Washington. I know she's not as tall and probably wouldn't look great in a powdered wig, but a year ago she reluctantly left her own Mount Vernon. Her farm is in that state up north. But I guess between Hillsdale and Mrs. Spaulding, it's a little tough to quarrel with them so much. She left the place she loves out of a sense of duty to find and to lead these extraordinary teachers, and to do what I and the board could not do on our own, and that is to translate the vision of what this school could be and what this school should be into the real and tangible excellent school that it now is and will be. I think you all probably know this already, but it needed to be said. Mrs. Spaulding, will you please stand and be recognized? Of course, there are a lot more people to thank and to recognize and to celebrate, from everybody at Hillsdale College who has been so generous with their time and their resources, to each and every one of the teachers and the staff members who have put in long, long hours, to the many donors and business partners and volunteers, many of whom are also in this room. Of course, properly recognizing them all here would start to sound like an Oscar speech. I'd probably hear the music play and I'd go to a commercial break. So just know this. This school is the work of many, and it is because of the support of even many more that has made this possible, and we're all overwhelmed with a sense of gratitude. So that's the celebration. But tonight is not just an occasion for celebration. I think it's also one for a challenge. The Journal of James McHenry, a Maryland delegate to the Constitutional Convention, records that on the last day of the convention, a lady asked Benjamin Franklin, "Well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" To which Franklin famously replied, "A republic, if you can keep it." I had a mind to issue the same challenge to us all this evening. What have we got? Private American classical school, if we can keep it. But then I remembered the words of C.S. Lewis in The Weight of Glory. He said, "There are no ordinary people. You've never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. So too is the life of a school. The citizens of Babel forgot this when they said, 'Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves.'" You see, one day, hopefully very, very long into the future, Columbus Classical Academy will no longer be. But everyone in this great hall will see eternity. And whether we keep our republic or keep this little academy is ultimately a secondary question. Because our challenge above all is always, as Scripture tells us, to keep ourselves pure, to keep ourselves in God's love, to keep ourselves from every evil. In other words, to keep ourselves living lives of virtue by pursuing what is eternally true and good and beautiful. And so for as long as God grants us in His providence, that is what Columbus Classical Academy will strive to achieve, to form knowledge and virtuous people, both for today and ultimately for eternity. I thank you all, and I look forward to a wonderful year. Now, Mrs. Spaulding will introduce Dr. Coupland.
It is indeed a delight to see you here tonight, to have over the course of the last 2 days for you to meet our esteemed faculty. They have worked very hard and they're ready for your kids, and it's just a pleasure to be here. It is also my pleasure to introduce Dr. Daniel B. Coupland. He is the Dean of the Diana Davis Spencer Graduate School of Classical Education and a Professor of Education at Hillsdale College. And he formerly served as the Dean of Faculty at Hillsdale. He earned a BA in Spanish from Liberty University, an MA in Linguistics from Open University, and his PhD in Education from Michigan State University. He began his career in education as a high school teacher. At Hillsdale College, he teaches courses on English, grammar, and classic children's literature. In 2013, Dr. Coupland was named Hillsdale College's Professor of the Year. In 2016, he was a resident scholar at the C.S. Lewis Study Center in Oxford, England. In 2017, Dr. Coupland received the Emily Doherty Award for Teaching Excellence. He is the former editor for the Journal of the Society for Classical Learning. He currently serves as an advisor to the Barney Charter School Initiative, and he sits on the advisory board for the Institute for Classical Education. His research focuses on classic children's literature and English grammar instruction. He is the co-author of an English grammar curriculum titled Well-Ordered Language, the one we use here. And he is also the author of Tried and True, a primer on sound pedagogy, which we have read as a staff and discussed, and Dr. Coupland was gracious enough to come and speak to us about that today. We're so grateful for you. We're glad to have you, and we're thankful for your presence here. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Coupland.
The t-shirt in the second row is much appreciated, so thank you very much for the Hillsdale College t-shirt. I feel most welcome, so thank you very much. You need to stand and turn around so everyone else has to go ahead and stand. Good, thank you very much. It's great to be here. It's been a great day with the faculty. I plan also to keep my comments brief, although I didn't do that this afternoon. I went quite long. In fact, I went 1 minute over, so I'll try not to do that today. But it was a joy. In fact, speaking of that, I had two great joys today. Two great joys that I really appreciate in life. Number one, I ate at Waffle House. Now, before you judge, you just need to realize that in the state of Michigan, we don't have Waffle House. And so when I come, south to Ohio, I make it an opportunity to eat, and I just have two words to say: smothered and covered. That's all I'm going to say about that. So, no, that's one great joy. My other great joy is actually coming to a school right before its opening, although I didn't even realize until today that tomorrow is the first day. But it's always a joy to come to a school right on the cusp of it being open. There's so much energy. And after spending an afternoon with the faculty, the students are in great hands. And I'm really excited to see what happens here. So, let me just make a few comments, and then I'll send you on your merry way, or someone else will. So I have a question that I'll start with. Why are you here? And I'm specifically asking that to parents. Why are you here? Why do you feel the need to come to a school like this? Why is this school even necessary? Well, let me talk a little bit about the education landscape in America today. And I'm not even going to pick the most kind of egregious examples, the kind that make it on the nightly news. I'm just going to talk about the education landscape as we see it today. Now, before I do that, I need to express to you that I'm a product of that landscape. I'm a public school grad. I was a public school teacher. I went to Michigan State. I studied within the establishment. So I'm coming from the inside, and I'm telling you what it's like today. So here we go. This is the education landscape in America today. What's the goal of education today in American education? I would argue, looking at the landscape, you could say something like self-actualization, right? Feeling good about myself is the goal of education. What are the students? Well, the students are, and again, I'm talking about what's going on in American education today. Who are the students? Well, the students are experts. They're experts in their own knowledge. Who are the teachers? Well, we talked about this earlier today. The teachers are co-equals with the students. They're meant to be guides on the sides. Their highest goal is to be relevant to their students. How about parents? You may not know this, but I can speak as an insider. Parents are uninformed, ignorant, and so their role must be minimized. And at best, they interfere with what the school is trying to do, and at worst, they are a corrupting influence. How about the classroom? Well, the modern American classroom is therapeutic. It's all about, again, self-actualization, student affirming. It encourages self-expression. In fact, students create the culture of the classroom. How about different activities like group projects, which we talked about today? Well, group projects and group work are good for their own sake. Not that they're moving towards anything. How about the curriculum? The curriculum is full of content-free skills. Sometimes it's about job preparation, and sometimes it's about social activism. How about early reading? Let's get specific about the curriculum in the modern American landscape. Well, it's usually taught by means of something that used to be known as whole language, although now it goes by a lot of different titles, like balanced literacy, anything except for explicit phonics instruction. We want to avoid that because it's too harsh or it's too boring, at least for the people who have to teach it. There's no history, it's more social studies. History, in other words, the past, has nothing to teach us because human nature is malleable. It changes over time. It's not permanent. Civics is more about current events or maybe social activism. What about literature? Well, the stories that students read should be whatever is current, relevant, popular, or maybe even socially transgressive. If classic stories are included, they must be, and here's the term, deconstructed, ripped apart, and show how narrow-minded the authors are. How about art? Well, art is all about self-expression. There's no universal standard for beauty. How about athletics? Athletics is specialized. It's only accessible for a select few, the jocks. They're allowed to do athletics. What about technology? Well, in the modern American educational landscape, technology is good for its own sake. It's an end unto itself. And what about something like achievement? Well, achievement in school should be exactly the same for everyone, regardless of time, focus, effort, and ability. That's the educational landscape today in America. How did we get here? Well, it's been a long slog. It's been at least 100 years slog. And we can point back to someone like John Dewey. He's an easy target, and he deserves plenty of blame, but it's not just John Dewey alone. But there's been a slide over this period of time, and this slide has been recognized as early as the 1950s, and I'll say one name and you'll be able to recognize Sputnik. Right? Sputnik opened the American eyes that, wait a second, maybe our education system is not as good as we thought it was. And there were reforms that came out of the 1950s, but those reforms were lost in the 60s and 70s, in the turmoil, the social turmoil. And then after that, in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, we get these reform efforts under these names. The National Commission on Education, of which a report came out, A Nation at Risk. And then we got Goals 2000. Does anyone remember that? How about No Child Left Behind? Remember that one? And then the one that came after, A Race to the Top. You may not recognize Race to the Top, but I bet you'll recognize Common Core, which is an element of Race to the Top. All of these efforts in American education were to reform education, and all of them failed. Why did they fail? Well, they failed because it was a top-down effort from people who thought they knew what should happen within a local community. Bureaucrats, what I call the education establishment. They were trying to dictate what should go on in classrooms at a national level. But there's something different going on now. And you could point, and yes, I'm going to use the C word, COVID. Right? You could point to COVID, you could say COVID had a part of it, but it was happening even prior to COVID. Let me give you an example, and this is not a political statement whatsoever. In 2018, when Ron DeSantis was running for president, he won by around 32,000 votes. Do you want to know what put him over the top? 100,000 African American mothers who mostly were registered Democrats. They were known as the school choice moms that actually got him elected. They went across party lines for the sake of their children. Of course, then we had COVID and we got to see, I think there was this idea in America that if I dropped my child off at school and picked up my child at the end of the day, and he had a few friends, and she enjoyed herself, that everything was perfectly fine. And then we had the experience of COVID, where education was actually delayed, and then we eventually got it broadcast into our home over screens. And I think that many parents were horrified by what they actually saw being done, all in the name of education. And post-COVID, we've seen this reaction in America about parents wanting more. And there's some examples that I'd like to point you to. Of course, in 2021, the Republican candidate, Glenn Youngkin, was put over the top. The #1 issue in that election in a purple state was education. That same year, in 2021, there was a group of parents that came together. They're known, actually, it was mothers, a group called Moms for Liberty. They started in 2021 in the state of Florida. Within 2 years, they now have 120,000 members with 200 chapters in 45 states. This year, at their summer conference, they hosted almost every major presidential candidate. In 2 years, they've grown to prominence, to the point where they are the face of parents' rights when it comes to education in America. Of course, we saw the school board elections of 2022. In 2023, where we are now, there are a few examples of where things are headed. For example, did you know that in the state of Texas, right now, there are 66,000 students on wait lists to get into charter schools? Just on the wait list to get into charter schools. Do you know that over the last 10 years, the increase of the number of students in the state of Texas who are in charter schools has actually doubled. The number of students in classical school has grown 7-fold over that time. Clearly, parents are seeing something in the educational landscape. They don't like it and they want alternatives to it. And it's interesting to see that classical education, although it's not just 10 years old, has arisen to the highest level. So what is this thing then? I explained the educational landscape. Let me talk a little bit about what classical education, using the same term. So what is the goal of classical education? Well, personal excellence, the pursuit of one's highest potential. How about students? Who are they in the classical education landscape? Well, they know things, except they're immature, right? They need to be shaped into mature adults by mature adults. How about the teachers? Well, teachers should know their content knowledge and their skills, but like we talked about earlier today, that's not exclusively it, just knowing things and being able to do things. It's also being a particular kind of person. The teachers at the school will serve as a model to your students while they're here. How about parents? We also talked about this today. I talked about it with other faculty. In classical education, as in this school here, parents are the first and the most important teachers. Ultimately, they are responsible, you are responsible for a child's education. The school is a resource for parents to use in educating their own children. What about the classroom? The classroom should be well ordered. It cultivates a self-discipline and respect for others, and it encourages excellence as well. The curriculum should be focused on wisdom and virtue, cultivating the kinds of things that you see in the honor code: honest, uprightness, being diligent, dutiful, and joyful. What about early reading? Well, you teach early reading by means of phonics. Why? Well, because it works. That's why. How about history? History, we study history because we can learn from the past, both the triumphs and the failures. How about civics? Civics is about how government works and why, but it also teaches that we have an obligation to one another in order to live in a civil society. Students should learn what it means to be human from great stories. That's where literature comes in. We don't just read stories because they're interesting. They actually tell us what it means to be a human being. Art is the pursuit of beauty. It's about crafting beautiful works, developing skills, but also learning from the masters themselves. Athletics is generalized in the best sense of that word. Everyone can participate and pursue personal excellence. Some will achieve higher, but everyone will have the opportunity for character education through athletics. How about technology? Well, technology is placed in its rightful place. It's a tool, it's a means to something higher and much more noble. And last but not least, some may achieve more because of time, focus, effort, and ability. But everyone in the school is encouraged to pursue personal excellence. That's what classical education is. Now, it took me a few minutes to be able to talk through all of that, so I'm going to give you some practical advice. I'm also going to give you what I call the parking lot answer. So let's say you're in the grocery store, and you just have a cart full of groceries, and you're headed up to your car. Yes, you have ice cream in the cart, so you can only have a certain amount of time. And one of your friends is coming across going into Kroger, right? Okay, going. I don't know if Kroger's a good thing or a bad. Okay, so going into Kroger, and you meet each other in the parking lot, and you get this question. So, I hear your kids going to that classical school. What's that all about? So you don't have time to give them the 20-minute answer that I just gave you before, where you contrast and all that. You've got about 2 minutes, maybe. So let me give you a little bit of a shorthand in order to articulate the kinds of things that I just described. I like to rely on what I call the 3 H's. So if you only have about 3 to 5 minutes to explain what's this thing all about, you can rely on the 3 H's. Here they are. Number 1, the head. Classical education is about the head. It's about cultivating the intellect. It's about knowing things about the world through science and mathematics, but also about humanity as well, through literature, art, history. So classical education focuses on the intellect, providing knowledge, cultivating knowledge. So the second H is the hands. It also is involved in the cultivation of skills. Education should be more than just knowledge. Students should be more than just a brain on a stick, right? They should know how to do things as well. So what are those things? Well, they should learn how to observe carefully, reason carefully, read well, write well, and speak well. So in education, a full, complete classical education has both knowledge, but it also has skills. But what differentiates classical education from any other form of education is the last H, and you can probably guess it. It's the heart, right? So the head, the hands, and the heart. And by the heart, I mean it is about the cultivation of character. This school wants your child to be a certain kind of person. What kind of person is that? Well, it's already mentioned in the honor code, but things like courage. There's going to be opportunity for students to cultivate courage and to demonstrate courage, self-control, hardworking, humble, just, and yes, even kind. Those are the opportunities. That's the cultivation of the heart, the head, the hands, and the heart. Oh, by the way, I also have an elevator answer. So this is 8 seconds. If someone says, hey, I need to run, what's this thing all about? Just tell them wisdom and virtue. And then just keep on moving. I'll explain later. So, all right, so last 2 things. I have 2 questions, right? And this is for you parents. As you look at the school, and the school, yes, it's a building, but a school is really the people, right? And what can you expect, or what should you expect from the school? Well, you know, I'm an outsider here, so I can kind of speak in this space here. So what should you expect from them? Well, I think at least 3 things. As a parent, I think you can expect transparency. This school's not trying to hide anything from you. In fact, you might actually learn something along the way with your own children, as I have along with my children. So you can expect transparency, being transparent about what's going on in the classroom, what your children are actually being taught. Number 2, quality. I've spent time with the faculty. They've worked very hard to hire a high-quality faculty. The curriculum is good, it's of high quality, and you should expect that over time. Number 3, as I've already articulated, you should also expect respect, because this school does identify you, parents, as the first and often the best teacher of your own children. And that's what you'll get from the school. You will get that respect, and you should expect it. So here's the tough part of my talk, is that what are your responsibilities? So again, I feel comfortable because I'm in this space kind of in between, both entities. And so I'm speaking to you about what responsibilities you have now that your children are coming to this school. So number one is the same thing that I have for my classes, and I tell them this at the beginning of the year. I say, show up and be involved, right? So number one is show up. And what I mean by that is your students should show up, make sure that they are present, and also, and no, they didn't tell me this, I'm coming this on my own, be on time. Actually, tardies and absences make education very, very difficult. So it'd be great if they showed up and they showed up on time. But also, you need to show up as well. There are going to be plenty of opportunities for you to be involved in the school. And you can ask, how can I help? But I'll just caution you as well, don't hover, right? So offer to help, be involved, but don't hover. Number two, communicate. Communicate with the school, and my recommendation to you is to start with the point of contact. If human beings are involved, there's going to be conflict at times. And if there's going to be conflict with the teacher, go directly to the teacher and have that conversation with other teachers, between two mature adults. So first one, show up. Number two, communicate. Number three, assume the best. I have in parentheses, trust but verify. Right? So assume the best. People you see up here, and the people in the front row, they're doing this because they believe in education, and they care about students, and they want to pass this tradition on to those students. So assume the best of those people. I can also verify. I have 3 children. Our youngest is almost out of school. Students don't always see the whole. So around the dinner table, there were many times where I would hear stories, even from my angelic children, that I could scratch my head, that can't be right? So through a conversation with the teacher, I realized that even my own angelic children didn't see the whole. And last but not least, be patient. Education is hard work, as you parents know. It's very, very difficult. So these teachers and the administrators are incredibly busy people, but they chose to become educators because they care for kids and they want them to be better people. So, in conclusion, this school is headed in the right direction. And I would encourage you to stick together, work together. And I'm really eager to see, and I'm excited to see the good things that will come from this noble effort. So thank you very much for your time. All the best as you start your school year. Yeah, thanks so much.